Um, so here's an example. Uh, Volcanic eruptions with the greatest death toll since 1900 are described in this table. So here I've got volcano names. They're listed right here. Then I've got some characteristics of these volcanoes. What country the volcano was in, what year did it erupt to kill these people, did it cause a tsunami, and how many people died as a result of that volcano. So here's a bunch of information that I've collected, and we can kind of diagram or dissect what each thing is. So, for example, the individuals in this study are the actual volcanoes. Those are what I'm trying to answer questions about. So, my individuals is this first column here. Then the variables are what the things are that I'm going to collect information about. I'm going to collect what country the volcano's in, the year it erupted, if it caused, yes or no, a tsunami, and then the actual number of deaths. So there's my variables there. And then my data is the actual values, or my observations are the uh, actual things. So country is the variable, and the observations are the names of the different countries they're in. And you can see how I've listed them up here. Year was also a variable, and here's my observations. The years that they erupted caused a tsunami. Here's the observations. Number of deaths. There's my observations. And then once we've compiled all of our data and we've organized it, we can answer, of course, questions about it. Which eruption caused the greatest number of deaths? That's pretty easy to find. It looks like the biggest one is 28,000, so Pele is, or Pele is. Um, so what eruption? So we'll just say the Pele eruption, or Pele volcano. Let's see, another question. How many more people died in 1902 Pele compared to 1982 El Chican eruption? So let's find those two. Pele we already knew, and El Chican is 1,879. So if we wanted to figure out how many more, what we want to do is find the difference of those two. So we'll take the deaths because of Pele, and we are going to subtract the deaths because of El Chican. We'll abbreviate that EC. So 28,000 people died, and let's subtract off the 1,879. And you could get out a calculator to do this if you'd like to. Your choice. So that's 1, 2, 1, 6. I think it's 2,000. 26,121 more people died in the Pele eruption, or Pele, the case may be. When we set up these studies, or when we do any statistical analysis, in general, these are kind of the 5 steps that we want to approach any of our problems with. First of all, we want to know what the heck the question is we're trying to answer. Why are we studying this group of people, okay? And we want to be very precise about that. Limit the scope of who we're trying to study and the question that we're trying to get answered. Then what you do is you're going to create a plan, okay? How are you going to select the people in your study, or how are you going to select the objects in your study? You know, if we were doing a study for our class here right now, we've got like 5, 6 people in here. For that, it'd be very easy to do what we call a census, where you just ask everybody the questions, or do the same, give everybody the same change in the single variable. So you could use the whole class instead of using a sample set. But it depends on what you're trying to get the answer to when you create this plan, how you're going to go about it. After you have your plan, then you're going to make your observations and collect your data. Okay, so that's where you start to make that table. And then after you have your data collected, you're going to analyze it. Now, analyzing is going to take a lot of different forms, okay? That's what this entire book is about. How do we analyze this data after we've collected it? And then lastly, the whole point is finally to draw this conclusion, trying to answer the question that we set out to answer. Lastly, we got a couple more definitions before we look at just a few examples. Um, Population, when we refer to population, we're referring to all the people whose characteristic or the characteristic is that we're trying to answer the question of. So if we're trying to answer how many students have their driver's license uh, at age 16, or how many students got their driver's license at age 16, the population would be all 16-year-olds, because that's what we're trying to answer the question about. Now, we can't poll everybody uh, because there's too many 16-year-olds in the world to figure this out. So you'd have to do a sample, um, and that sample means you're selecting a subgroup or a smaller group that can represent the huge population, and then you can extrapolate answers about the whole group from that smaller sample. Okay, so as an example, if you were taking a survey and trying to discover something about adults in America, you certainly, the population you're talking about is all American adults. It'd be impossible to question them all. Um, and so what we do is we set up a sample space, which is just a group of adults that we survey. Okay, now we want those adults to represent the population of America when we do this. So we got population and sample are two other terms. So let's go ahead and look at using or identifying these things. So here's an example. In a poll, okay, so they've asked a bunch of people, 1,000 people randomly, of American adults. 48% said that they disapprove of the way Congress is doing its job. The study then made an inference about all American adults. So let's see here. We did a poll of 1,000 American adults. 48 said they disapprove of Congress, how it's doing its job. And then they inferred something about all American adults. So the variable is the thing basically that we're asking of these adults. We're asking the adults, do you or do you not approve of how Congress is doing their job? That's the data that we're going to collect, so that's our variable. What is the sample? The sample is the not 100, but 1,000 randomly selected adults. What is the population? That's the whole group. So American adults is everybody that we're trying to answer the question about, but we're only going to sample 1,000 people. Another example of the same idea. Do you think, let's highlight this, do you think the drinking age should be lowered to 18? Now, that's not a question to you, it's a question in a telephone survey, and 74% of 1,013 randomly selected American adults said no. The study then made an inference about all American adults. So let's define our variable. The variable is how American adults, better capitalize that, we won't be specific about this. Define the how American adults, if American adults, and that'll fix it. If American adults think the drinking age should be lowered to 18. What is the sample? The sample space 1,013 surveyed adults. And then finally, what's the population? So American adults. So we're trying to conclude something about the entire group, and you can even see they make an inference about all American adults. So that's our entire population. All right, that should do it. That should get you to our assignment. And the assignment is this Google form. You do not have to worry about this number. That's for